Welcome back to the Mental Health Minute. I'm Dr. Emily Mayfield, a licensed psychologist. Thank you for watching this video and being a part of the Mindset Therapy family. Today I'll have a little different focus for this video on my channel. In my videos, I usually discuss topics related to narcissism and other mental health topics in a general educational sense. However, today I want to use a specific case in the news to use as an example for the topics I cover on my channel. I'll be discussing the case of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie and using their interactions to provide examples for many of the topics I cover on my channel. Gabby is a young woman who went on a cross-country trip with her fiancé in her van. Although they departed on the trip together, her fiancé returned from the trip alone. She was later found deceased and her death was deemed a homicide. At the time of this video, there has been no further information on cause of death or suspects. The specifics of the case can be found through other channels and news stories, and I will not go over those today. What I will do is discuss some of the behaviors in their interactions on the police body cam footage that was released as she was missing. This footage was made during a traffic stop of Gabby and Brian after Moab, Utah police pulled them over in response to a 911 call placed about a possible domestic incident involving both of them. Again, I will not go over the specifics or the background in the case in detail because that can be found elsewhere. I have provided links below on how you can access the information on their case. If you haven't already seen the body cam footage, it might be helpful to watch that prior to this video. So my focus today will be on expressing my thoughts on the situation and how it ties into the topics I discuss on this channel. It can be helpful to have an example from a situation you or those you know are not a part of. When you try to find things in yourself or those you know, there is often a biased opinion. While looking at the topics through the lens of a stranger, I hope this will be helpful in understanding terms and behaviors I have discussed in other videos. Throughout this video, I'll be discussing concepts related to narcissism and mental health. As specific topics come up, I'll paste a picture of the thumbnail as well as list the title of a video on my channel where you can get more information. I hope this ties in all of the information and provides a cohesive unit that can help you understand topics related to mental health. I will also link the videos below in the description. Chapters are present in this video, further making it easy to find a certain section in this video on a topic discussed. I must also be clear, I am not diagnosing or pathologizing either Gabby, Brian, or his family. I have never met them, nor have I done a complete assessment on them. Information provided today is purely opinion and not meant to serve any clinical purposes. Now let's get into discussing important topics related to narcissism, abuse, and mental health. When you see the body cam footage from the traffic stop, the first thing you notice is how upset Gabby is and how calm Brian is. We don't know exactly what was happening prior to the couple being pulled over. However, the specifics of the case are less important, and it's not really necessary to understand what was happening. We'll work under the basic understanding that there was an alleged fight between Gabby and Brian that was noticeable enough for a stranger to call 911. This call placed by the stranger was the reason for the traffic stop. In this body cam footage, Gabby is clearly upset and has difficulty expressing what she is experiencing, while Brian remains calm. In most any situation, if one person is highly distraught, the other person will also be emotional. This emotion can be positive or negative. Gabby is clearly upset. The expected responses from Brian might be anger because she's upset, anxiety because she's anxious, or caring because he wants to help her calm down. However, what you notice in Brian is the absence of emotion. At times, he even appears to be joking with the police, but any emotion he might be experiencing is not directed at Gabby and what is happening in their dynamic. His fiancée is clearly upset, yet he is acting like they are having lunch with their friends. Brian is over-controlled in his emotions, and this is commonly seen in abusers. People who are narcissist or abusive often demonstrate over-control in all aspects of their life, including their emotions. They must maintain a strict hold on their own emotions and actions to maintain control. Their biggest concern is a fear of losing control, so they are over-controlled. In the interaction with Brian and the police, he is not afraid of losing control through acting out, but a fear of losing control over a narrative that he is trying to create. To show emotion might impact how he is seen, so he has a tight grip on his emotions to stay in control. During the interaction between Gabby, Brian, and the police officers, there is discussion on how Brian was upset because he wanted to go hiking and she wanted to work on her social media. This was likely a contributor to the argument that led to the police call. This is another example of how Brian was controlling. There is this expectation from Brian that they do what he wants when he wants. If Gabby doesn't submit to his demands, he gets angry and upset. Brian likely expects things to be about him, and if she wants to express a different opinion or expectation, he becomes upset. Of particular concern is her report that he locked her out of the car and told her she needs to calm down. There appears to be a threat of him leaving her out there alone with no one around. This has to have been terrifying and overwhelming for Gabby. It was also likely not the first time he has made a threat to abandon her. When he tells her she needs to calm down and take a walk while locking her out of the van, there is another way he controls her. Brian knows what buttons to push to make Gabby the most upset. And when he doesn't get his way, he will push those buttons. If you have ever interacted with a narcissist, you have seen they know exactly what buttons to push to get you upset. They can quickly spit out harsh, belittling statements as if they have been at the ready, waiting to say those things that will hurt you the most. What you also notice in the video is how Gabby discusses interactions between her and Brian. Gabby tends to take responsibility for how things are between both of them and for the interaction that happened prior to them being pulled over. She discussed how she is mean to him. She quickly clarifies that she's not mean in words that she says to him, but how she acts around him. When she is anxious from her reported OCD, she cleans more and wants things done a certain way. This leads to conflict between him and her. However, in this interaction, she blames herself and not him. Yes, she may engage in behaviors that he doesn't like, but her acting out her reported OCD is not her being mean. However, that is exactly how Brian has communicated it to her, and that is how she communicates it to others. If she becomes anxious and engages in anxious behaviors, Brian likely gets upset, but then takes no responsibility for his behaviors. He blames her for how things are going, and there is no fault from him. She has learned to take responsibility because of the likely years of abuse from Brian, saying she is the problem. This is gaslighting. Brian has twisted her perception of reality so that it supports his end game of control and manipulation. If he can get her to think she is the problem and issues in her relationship and their relationship are because of her, then he can remove himself as a possible cause for any issues that arise. She is made to think she is the crazy one. So when the police pull them over, she quickly starts to take fault for the interaction and how she acted a certain way, and that contributed to the problems that they experienced. Gabby no longer knows what role she does or doesn't play in interactions, but has learned to question herself and to assume she is a problem. This is likely a defense mechanism for Gabby. She has learned that when Brian doesn't get his way, he will enter into rage or even the silent treatment. Gabby is the peacemaker and wants things to be good between them, even if that means she takes responsibility for what is happening. Brian also appears to belittle Gabby as a way to gaslight and abuse. She discusses with the police officer how he doesn't support her dream of being a blogger and influencer, and that he doesn't think she can make it work. Brian doesn't believe in Gabby. Despite being on this road trip with her, where the intention from the beginning was for her to blog and engage in social media, he still doesn't believe in her. He, however, continues on this trip and does the fun things he would like to do, while also telling her that her vision is not worth it and he doesn't believe in her. This is how he maintains control and can continue his gaslighting. No matter what he thinks of her ability to be successful or how much evidence exists of her success, he must continuously put her down so that she develops and maintains doubt in herself. A confident person in the relationship is much harder to control and manipulate. As long as he can keep her feeling insecure, he can more easily gaslight her. Gabby likely put up with this for months or even years, but over time it can wear on anyone. The goal of someone who gaslights and belittles is to wear the person down until they reach their breaking point. Then, when she gets emotional and upset, he can point her out as the crazy one that is uncontrollable, while he takes a back seat. Mission accomplished. There is also blame shifting. The more worn down Gabby gets, the more she doubts herself, and the easier it is for her to take responsibility for things that happened. This is where Brian will come in and blame shift. He takes advantage of this need for her to take the blame, and he continues this narrative. He lets her, the officers, and even himself believe she is a problem and not him. Narcissists like to control and see the other person break down and be upset. This helps them feel better about themselves while protecting against shame, which can lead to narcissistic injury and then narcissistic rage. Throughout the body cam video, Brian remains calm and discusses what happened leading up to them being pulled over. He was acting like the victim, which is often seen in the abusive scenarios. The abuser plays the victim to get more attention and bring people on their side. This is also part of the blame shifting. Brian is working to recruit flying monkeys to help further his narrative. So in the real world, the flying monkeys are the people recruited by the narcissist to carry out their smear campaign against another person. The narcissists are masters at their game of control and manipulation, and they can easily bring people into their world to work against someone they are targeting. When they can get someone else to do the dirty work for them, their hands remain clean and they can continue to gaslight by trying to convince their partner and others that they are not the problem. There are many flying monkeys in Brian's life, but notably his parents, sister, and the police officers. This isn't to comment on how the police officers handle the situation, but to help see that they have been brought in as flying monkeys unknowingly. They have become a part of Brian's story on how Gabby is emotional, easily upset, and has mental health issues. They are a captive audience for Brian's storytelling, and this only allows him to further believe his own narrative. Gabby knows Brian is talking to the officers, and I can imagine this is creating more doubt in her. Remember, Brian has likely spent months or years gaslighting and blame shifting, making Gabby think it is her OCD, anxiety, and other aspects of her that are the problem. She has likely seen him explain this to other people and watched them believe him. Now she must sit back and wonder what is he telling the police, while also trying to come up with a way she can get them both out of this situation, even if that means her taking the blame. All Brian must do is convince the officers of his story and reintroduce Gabby back into the picture. He knows that once she returns to the conversation with the officers, she will take responsibility and their unhealthy dynamic will continue. His parents likely enabled this type of behavior in Brian when he and Gabby lived with them, making Gabby feel more and more alone and more dependent on Brian and his family. She was likely worn down and made to believe she was the problem whenever there was conflict. If she didn't have OCD or other mental illness, then things would be okay. At least that is what she was probably told. It is very likely Gabby was trauma bonded to Brian. Trauma bonding is one reason that many people stay in abusive relationships. When things go well, the abuser will love bomb. However, when the abuser's partner behaves in a way the abuser doesn't like or agree with, they will punish through yelling, the silent treatment, or even physical abuse. In an attempt to return to positive interactions with the abuser, the partner being abused will change their behaviors so as to not anger the abuser. This back and forth between love bombing and punishment is what creates the perfect environment for trauma bonding. Trauma bonding only strengthens over time. The uncertainty on what actions will gain you praise and which will lead to punishment can feel confusing and overwhelming. There were likely positives in the relationship because they agreed to go on this cross-country van trip together. However, there is also emerging evidence of negative interactions based on reports of people who saw them together fighting, and even Gabby saying he didn't believe in her social media vision. Choosing to leave a narcissist or other abusive partner is a difficult decision. There may be fear of retaliation, belief you are the problem, or worry that you won't find someone else. Even when there's ample evidence the relationship is toxic, those in abusive relationships stay because it is so difficult to leave. Gabby also likely held on to hope that Brian would change. She wanted things to work out between them and continue this journey together while she built her social media presence. The hope helped her through those days that felt hopeless, but also led her to stay in a relationship that was toxic and abusive. She had a regular supply of hopium that allowed her to push through each day, hoping the next day would be better. The last point I want to bring up in this video is the topic of mutual abuse. There appears to be discussion on whether Gabby was the abuser in this interaction or if she was acting in self-defense. Or were both Gabby and Brian abusive? Mutual abuse is very rarely, if ever, present. Abuse in relationships hinges on power and control, and this is often with only one person. Two people cannot have the same power and control. In abusive relationships, there's a power differential. When someone reacts back to the abuser's abuse, it is because they have reached their limit and are setting boundaries in the only way possible in that moment. Reacting back to the abuser's abuse is not done by the person to control the other person, and this is what makes it different from abuse. They are reacting to protect themselves and not abusing to control and exert power. When Gabby was discussing the events of the day that made her emotional and upset, the gaslighting, belittling, and controlling behaviors of Brian were evident. He knew what buttons to push to make her upset and feel more in control of a situation he didn't feel in control of. He wanted to hike, she wanted to work on her social media. When he felt like he wasn't getting his way, he threatened to abandon her. He knew this would be the final straw for her and make her the most upset. He locked the doors, told her to calm down, and took all control away from Gabby. She reacted to get out of that situation. This is not mutual abuse. While Gabby may have hit him, this was in an attempt to not have him leave her alone in a place far from home and without anything. She was trying to get into the car, and in the process, he was hit. Brian is at fault in this situation and not Gabby. When people watch the body cam footage of the interaction with the police, it is easy to say the police should have done more. They should have seen what was happening and the danger that was present. However, we have much more information now than the police had at the time. This was the only interaction any of the officers have ever had with Gabby or Brian, so they had no idea what would be a normal way of responding from either of them. The situation is further complicated by the blame shifting from Brian, the need to take responsibility from Gabby, and the recruitment of flying monkeys from Brian so that he can get the most people on his side as possible. Brian is manipulative and knows exactly how to behave based on what he needs from someone else. Some of you watching this video may have had similar experiences where you later learned of someone who was being abused and you were shocked to learn that information because they seemed to otherwise be happy. Or you were the one being abused and no one believed you because your abuser was nice and caring to everyone but you. Identifying abuse is so difficult when the power differential has been effectively set, allowing the abuser to control the narrative while the person being abused readily provides information to support the narrative they have been gaslit into believing. I make the videos on my channel to educate each one of you on what abuse is, how an abusive person might act, and what you can do about it so that the power can shift into the hands of the victim and out of the abusers. I hope with this video you can start to see real-world examples of situations related to the topics I have discussed in other videos. I have linked all of the videos discussed below. I've also added chapters with the video title so you can more easily go back to a certain thumbnail to see what it looks like, or you can replay a certain section of the video to review the information presented. Use this video with the other videos on my channel to get more information on very important topics to keep you and those around you safe from abuse of the narcissist. Thank you for watching this video and being a part of the Mindset Therapy family. This video was longer than most, but I wanted to try to string various concepts together. You can follow us on social media for more content related to all things mental health. If you know someone who might enjoy this video, please share it so we can continue to have the Mindset Therapy family grow. I'd also like to hear from you in the comments below, even if just to say hi.